Today we're talking backup strategies for somebody who has lots of data, but you have a really limited budget. I'll go over how I am maximizing my backup storage options, and I'm not breaking the bank doing it. Here's a story about why I'm very diligent with my backups. Back in 2008, I lost 2 months worth of data for my business when my NAS failed, and the tape backup of the NAS also failed during the restore. And my offsite copy of the data was 2 months old. It was very painful. I still to this day remember the panic that set in when the tape backup failed during the restore process. And I knew that the offsite copy was old. I had just been remiss and lazy, and there wasn't a cloud option at the time, so you physically had to swap out the tape, store that one at home, and so I had just left the tape in there for a while and had been backing up the NAS and forgot about it until I needed to do the restore. And then, of course, that's when the panic sets in, right? So imagine if you were to lose everything on your computer and you had no backup, and you had a backup and you went to restore that and it failed during the restore. Do you have a backup offsite somewhere that you could go to, and how old is it? Take a look at your current backup strategy, what you're doing. Could you handle a total loss here of your computer? And what would you do to get back up and running again? Okay, so let me explain my strategy. So I follow the 3-2-1 backup strategy, which is a pretty common standard that most businesses use at a minimum, and then most everyday folks should definitely be using. And that means you need 3 copies of your data. 2 of them need to be on different mediums locally, right? So at your office, at your home, wherever. And then 1 of them needs to be off-site. And it could be a cloud storage, or it could be just a physical copy of your data off-site somewhere. So that if you had a disaster, fire, theft, whatever, and your computer and the backup is gone, could you recover from that? Could you restore and get back up and running again? I was looking for an option, since I have about 12 terabytes of data now that I need to keep stored. Where could I store this offsite or in the cloud that wasn't going to cost me, $5 to $10 per terabyte a month for storage in the cloud? I found a really good option, and I'll just share that in just a minute with you. I just wanted to go over one other point here. So that 3-2-1 backup strategy, what it does is it really prevents data loss, especially if your data becomes infected with malware, ransomware, all of those things, that you've got another copy of your data somewhere else that will be not infected or not locked or whatever, that you can get to and restore. Because these things can happen. The other thing is drives fail, so you have to be prepared for that, and you have to realize that that is going to happen. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's just when is it going to happen. So you want to be prepared for that. So let me just go over what I'm currently doing right now, and there's even a more budget option from what I'm doing, and I'm going to share that with you after I go over mine, so stick around. Okay, my strategy is I have a NAS, and I use that for time machine backups of my computer and of an extra drive that I have attached to my computer that gives me some additional storage. So my MacBook Pro has 4 terabytes of storage on it, and I've got a 12 terabyte drive that is attached via USB to my computer. It's actually attached to a hub that's eventually attached to my computer. So I've got a place to offload things from my hard drive that I don't use on a daily basis and store them over there. And then my NAS backs up all of that and includes version history. So I could go back if I need to retrieve a file that was deleted a month ago or something. I can go back and get that from the NAS. My NAS is in the closet because it is kind of noisy, so I wouldn't want it in here. But it's in there, and it's a 4-bay Synology NAS. It's a 920 plus, they call it. And that has 424, 40. So it's got about 32 terabytes of data to store on there. It's using what they call an SHR, and it's complicated, but the gist of it is that if one of the 4 drives fails, I can put a new drive in there to replace it, and it'll rebuild all the data. You won't lose any of your data. If more than one of the drives fails, well, then you've lost your version history and you have to start over with a new backup. But that is an expensive option when you start to look at the cost for each drive and the cost for the unit. I think that unit that I paid for was, I think I got a good deal on it. It was about $500, but then I have to get the drives, and those are probably about $200 each, so you get another $800. You're at $1,300 for just a Time Machine backup. So it's an expensive option, and people do a lot more with a NAS than just using it for a Time Machine backup. So I am not really utilizing it to its fullest benefit. But for me, and for what I wanted to do, it works for my situation. Now, a lower cost option that I could have gone with is just to get a large hard drive that, let's say a 20 terabyte hard drive, like external drive, and just plug that in here to my hub. And then I could Time Machine back up the extra drive I've got here, plus the MacBook Pro. I could Time Machine all of that to that backup drive. There are other options besides using Time Machine. You can also use, I have a program called Carbon Copy Cloner that also allows you to back up and keep version history so that you can go through and do the same kind of a restore. I like the way Time Machine works. It's a bit of a mystery what it does. Sometimes it just takes forever to do things, but I like the way it works. It's not totally foolproof. And I'm saying this because out of the 15 years I've been using Macs, twice now, I've gotten a message that Time Machine was corrupted and it needs to redo the backup, start from scratch. And that means you've lost all your version history and you have to start completely over. So it's not bulletproof. And for me, I'd rather just have the NAS for that Time Machine backup, because if one of the drives fails, I can replace it and rebuild the backup from it. But if I'm just using a single drive for my backup and that fails, I've definitely lost all my version history. So I think the NAS is, a little more insurance on preserving that history. So the way that you need to look at all of this, though, is that as your risk goes up, your cost goes down. So you need to find that medium in there where your risk, you're comfortable with the amount of risk, and you can afford the amount that it's going to cost you for that risk level. So like I said, if you only have one copy of your data, your risk is very high, but your cost is very low. If you have 10 copies of your data and several of them are off-site, your cost is going to be very high, but your risk is going to be very low of losing your data. So you've got to find that happy medium in there where you're comfortable with it. And granted, your tolerance for risk will probably go down if you have a loss and you've actually can't recover something. I think if everybody's lost data at least once and had to go through that, your risk tolerance for losing data definitely goes down. You're not wanting to take a bunch of risks. You're not going to be as cavalier with your data as you are before something like that happens. So just remember that. Everything's going to fail eventually. All these drives, everything will fail. Your job here is to just make sure you safeguard your data as best you can within the budget that you've got. So let me just tell you how I'm backing up my offsite backup. So I use Backblaze. They have a personal plan for $99 US a year for unlimited storage. The catch is I cannot back up my NAS to Backblaze with that plan. I can only back up things that are attached to my physical MacBook via USB, USB hub, etc. So I can back up my MacBook Pro, I can back up my 12 terabyte drive that's attached to it because it's attached via USB, and all of that can be backed up to the cloud. Now, the nice part about that plan is if I do lose all of my data, they will send me a drive with all of my data on it, and I can return that drive after I've done a restore, and they'll give me a refund back for the money that it costs to ship me the drive. I think it's $189 for them to send you a drive. But that is way less expensive than for me, say $60 a month for a Glacier storage on Amazon of my data, right? So yes, I can't back up anything that's network attached. So that is that downside. But for my current situation that I've set up, this scenario that I've got, this works really well. My cloud storage cost is very low. I have a NAS, which if I didn't have the NAS, I could just have a drive attached here for my Time Machine backup or Carbon Copy Cloner backup, whichever one you want to use. And then I've got one more backup strategy that I use, and a little twist to it is I have a little 4 terabyte hard drive that I picked up for $99 on Amazon, and I use that with Carbon Copy Cloner to just make a clone of my MacBook Pro's hard drive. And it just does it automatically like once a week and just makes a clone of it. Say I lost my MacBook Pro and I go to the Time Machine and I go to restore and there's a problem, it's corrupted or something. Then I've got to go get a copy of a drive from Backblaze and go through all of that and wait. There'll be a lot of time delay. Whereas I can just at least get my MacBook up and running. So that's just a really inexpensive little option that is just some added safety. The other thing I like about that is if I'm traveling and I take my MacBook with me, I've got an extra copy of my MacBook home, not with me. So that if I lost my MacBook, it got stolen or something, it just makes it a lot easier and the risk is lower, and I'll be able to get my computer back up and running a lot quicker. That's my strategy. If you're looking for a lower cost option, go with just backing up your computer and drives to another drive, and then using the cloud backup option to back up your drives or your backup drive. You can just back that up to the cloud. Although if it was me, I would rather have my individual files all backed up to the cloud than have a Time Machine backup backed up to the cloud. Because again, that can get corrupted and you don't want to risk that as your last resort is your Time Machine backup. I want my Time Machine backup to be the one in the middle so that there's one more that I could go to that is not a Time Machine backup that I could do a restore with. So I hope that helps. If you've got any horror stories about backups, go ahead and share them in the comments. If you've got any questions, go ahead and drop that in. I'll put a link for Backblaze in there for you if you want to check that out. And I'll put some links for some drives that I'm using that I have found to be reliable for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.